Ethan Cole never liked weddings. They were loud, emotional, and full of happy couples who looked at each other the way he used to look at Lily, before life took her away too soon. 3 years had passed since the accident, but grief doesn't follow a calendar. It lingers quietly, between school drop-offs, in the empty side of the bed, and in moments like this, standing at the back of a ballroom, pretending to enjoy someone else's happiness. The hall was glowing with warm amber lights. Laughter and chatter filled the air, mixing with the scent of roses and champagne. Ethan adjusted his tie, a little too tight around his neck, and smiled politely at strangers passing by. He wasn't supposed to feel out of place. Marcus, his college roommate and one of his oldest friends, was the groom. And yet, surrounded by couples twirling to romantic songs, Ethan felt like a ghost in a room full of life. He glanced at his phone. No messages. Emma was fine. His sister had sent a photo earlier of his 7-year-old daughter building a fort out of couch cushions and giggling like the world was perfect. Ethan's heart softened. Emma was the reason he kept going, the reason he smiled, even when it hurt. Still, tonight he was here for Marcus. He found a quiet corner near the bar, content to sip water and people watch. That's when he saw her. A woman in a soft blue dress, standing near the far end of the room. Her curls bounced as she laughed at something the bride said. Her smile lit up her whole face, unrestrained, genuine, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. She wasn't polished or trying too hard like many guests. She seemed real, comfortable in her own skin. Ethan's eyes lingered for a moment longer than they should have. Then she turned her head, and caught him looking. He quickly looked away, pretending to be fascinated by his drink. His ears burned. He hadn't been caught staring at a woman since Lily. He told himself it was nothing. Just curiosity. But when Marcus made his way over a few minutes later, grinning, Ethan couldn't resist asking, "Hey, who's the woman in the blue dress?" With the camera, Marcus laughed. "That's Claire Bennett, Hannah's friend from work, does photography for travel magazines. She's the reason the wedding photos look like they belong in Vogue." Ethan chuckled. "She seems fun." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Fun, beautiful, and completely out of your league, buddy. But don't worry, she's single." Ethan waved him off, pretending not to care. But his gaze betrayed him. It drifted back to her again and again. The ceremony passed beautifully, the couple exchanging vows that drew both laughter and tears. During dinner, Ethan found himself seated across the room from Claire. Once or twice, their eyes met briefly, each time followed by a shy smile from her and an awkward sip of water from him. He wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't ready. At least, that's what he told himself. When the band started playing upbeat music, the dance floor filled quickly. Ethan stayed back, talking to a few old college friends and making the occasional small joke. But as the night went on, the songs grew slower, softer, and the lights dimmed to gold. He felt the ache of absence again. The absence of someone's hand in his, the simple comfort of dancing with someone who fit perfectly in his arms. He sighed and stepped out to the terrace, breathing in the cool night air. The stars were faint, hidden by city glow. He loosened his tie and leaned on the railing. For a moment, peace. Then, behind him, a familiar voice. "Leaving already?" He turned. Claire stood in the doorway, the blue of her dress deepening under the night sky. Her curls framed her face, and she held her heels in one hand, her bare feet silent on the floor. Ethan smiled faintly, thinking about it. "I'm not exactly the life of the party." "Neither am I," she said, walking closer. "I just fake it better." He laughed softly. "You seem to be doing fine." "Well, maybe, but only because people assume a woman with a camera is working." She shrugged playfully, eyes glinting. "What's your excuse?" "I'm just a guest," he said simply, trying not to stand out. She tilted her head. "You're failing at that." He raised an eyebrow. "In a bad way." She smiled. "In a noticeable way." Something warm flickered in his chest. He hadn't flirted in years, didn't even remember how, but she made it easy. "Come on," she said suddenly, holding out her hand. "Dance with me." He blinked. "What?" "The song's almost over," she said, nodding toward the ballroom where Can't Help Falling in Love was beginning. "It's a crime not to dance to Elvis." He hesitated. "I don't dance." Her smile widened. Then I guess I'll just have to lead. Before he could think, she took his hand. Her fingers were warm, steady. She guided him inside, weaving between laughing guests until they reached the center of the floor. Ethan felt out of place, but she didn't seem to notice. She placed his hand gently on her waist, rested hers on his shoulder, and swayed. The music filled the air, slow, timeless, familiar. For a moment, Ethan forgot everything else. The world narrowed to her eyes, her scent, lavender and vanilla, and the softness of her laughter when he stepped on her foot. "You're really bad at this," she teased. "I warned you," he said, smiling. She looked up, studying him. "You smile differently than most people. Like it's rare." He swallowed. "Maybe it is." They fell into silence, just moving with the music. Around them, lights twinkled and laughter blurred into the background. When the song ended, she didn't step away immediately. Their eyes met again, and Ethan felt something shift, something fragile but real. She smiled softly. "See, not so bad." Then, before he could say a word, she slipped away into the crowd, her blue dress vanishing among the other dancers. Ethan stood there, breath unsteady, hand still tingling from her touch. He looked toward the door she'd disappeared through, wanting to call out but not knowing what to say. It had been one dance. Just one. But for the first time in 3 years, his heart didn't feel heavy. As he left the hall later that night, the music fading behind him, he caught his reflection in the glass door. His tie was loose, his hair a mess, and he was smiling. Really smiling. He didn't know if he'd ever see Claire again. But somehow, that didn't matter. Because for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Ethan didn't sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Claire, her smile, the curve of her lips when she teased him, the warmth of her hand resting in his. It had been one dance, just a few minutes on a crowded floor, but it felt like something had been shaken awake inside him. He wasn't foolish enough to think it was love. No, it was something quieter, gentler, like remembering sunlight after years of rain. Still, by the next morning, as he brewed his coffee, Ethan found himself replaying the moment again and again. The laughter, the way she said, "See, not so bad," and then, her disappearing into the crowd like a dream. He had no way to reach her. No last name, no number. Just a memory that felt more real than the day itself. He tried to push it out of his mind. There was work to do, laundry to fold, and his little girl to get ready for their Sunday morning routine. "Daddy, are we going to the park today?" Emma asked, hopping into the kitchen in mismatched socks. "Of course we are," he said, ruffling her hair. "But first, pancakes." Emma squealed and clapped her hands. By the time they finished breakfast, the thought of Claire had almost faded. Almost. Until, as they walked to their favorite cafe before the park, something made Ethan stop in his tracks. Sitting by the window, her camera resting on the table, was her. Claire. Her hair was tied loosely, sunlight brushing against her face as she scrolled through her camera. She looked exactly the same as last night, calm, effortlessly graceful, and completely unaware of the chaos she had stirred in him. Ethan's heart stuttered. "It's her," he muttered. Emma tugged his hand. "Who?" He smiled softly. "A friend I met last night." He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should interrupt her. Maybe she wouldn't even remember him. Maybe that dance meant nothing to her. But then, as if feeling his gaze, Claire looked up. Recognition flashed in her eyes, then surprise, then something warmer. "Ethan who doesn't dance," she said, smiling as he approached. He chuckled nervously. "You remember. How could I forget?" she said, setting her camera down. "You stepped on my foot twice." Emma giggled. "He always does that when we dance too." Claire's eyes softened. "You must be Emma." The little girl nodded shyly. "Daddy said you were pretty." Ethan nearly choked on his words. She exaggerates." Claire laughed, a melodic sound that filled the space between them. "Well, your daddy's sweet. Sit with me." And just like that, Ethan and Emma found themselves sharing pancakes and hot chocolate with a woman who felt both like a stranger and someone he'd known forever. Claire told stories that made Emma's eyes sparkle, about photographing elephants in Africa, tasting rain in Bali, and sleeping under a sky full of stars in Chile. She listened just as intently when Emma told her about her stuffed rabbit, Daisy, and how she wanted to be an astronaut so she could see Mommy's star up close. For a moment, silence. Claire glanced at Ethan gently, understanding instantly what wasn't said. Ethan smiled faintly, brushing Emma's hair back. She talks to her mom's star every night. Claire reached across the table, not touching, just resting her hand close to his. That's beautiful, she whispered. After brunch, Emma insisted on showing Claire her favorite park swings. Claire didn't hesitate. She kicked off her sandals and ran with Emma across the grass, laughing as they took turns on the swings and chased bubbles. Ethan watched them from the bench, the sound of their laughter floating through the crisp air. Something in his chest loosened, the tight, quiet ache that had lived there for years. When Claire finally joined him, slightly breathless and glowing from the sun, she smiled. She's wonderful. She is, Ethan said softly. She's my whole world. Claire nodded. I can see that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Emma chase pigeons near the fountain. Then Claire said quietly, I'm leaving tonight. He turned to her. Leaving? Flight to Morocco. Work project. She smiled faintly. I wasn't even supposed to be at the wedding. Hannah begged me to come. Ethan looked down, his fingers tightening around the coffee cup. I see. Hey, she said gently. Don't look so sad. I didn't mean to drop that on you. I'm not sad, he lied. She smiled knowingly. You're a terrible liar, Ethan. He laughed under his breath. Yeah, maybe. There was a pause, the kind that feels full rather than empty. Claire looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, you know, last night, when we danced, I felt something. I didn't expect that. He met her eyes. Neither did I. Maybe it doesn't have to mean anything, she said, voice thoughtful. But maybe it's okay if it does. Ethan swallowed hard, unsure what to say. Every instinct told him not to fall, not to hope, but her eyes made him forget every rule he'd built around his heart. They walked slowly toward her car as the sun began to dip, painting the sky in pink and gold. Emma ran ahead, humming to herself. When they reached the car, Claire turned to him. So, this is goodbye. I guess it is, he said quietly. She tilted her head. You don't sound convinced. He smiled faintly. Maybe because I don't want it to be. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The breeze carried the faint scent of lavender, her scent. Claire stepped closer, her eyes searching his. You don't have to be ready, Ethan. You just have to be. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. He wanted to say something. Anything. But before he could, she leaned up on her toes and kissed his cheek. Her voice was soft against his ear when she whispered, save me a dance. Then she was gone. Car door closing, engine fading into the distance. Ethan stood there long after the taillights disappeared. Emma came up beside him, holding his hand. Daddy, she asked, is she coming back? He smiled gently. I hope so, sweetheart. I really do. Weeks passed. The wedding faded into memory. Work filled his days, and Emma's laughter filled his nights. But sometimes, when he drove past the park or heard an old love song, his mind drifted back to a woman in a blue dress. Then one evening, when he checked his mailbox, a small envelope fell out. There was no return address, just his name in looping handwriting. Inside was a photograph. It was from the wedding. The two of them on the dance floor, caught mid-laugh, his hand in hers, lights swirling like stars around them. On the back, written in neat handwriting, were just a few words. Greater than, found this while editing the wedding photos. Thought you should have it. C.P.S. I meant what I said. Save me a dance. Ethan stood there on his porch, the evening wind cool against his face, a smile tugging at his lips. He slipped the photo into his wallet, right beside Emma's picture. Somewhere in the world, Claire was chasing sunsets again, but somehow, Ethan knew she'd find her way back. Because some dances don't end when the music stops. Some just wait, until the right song begins again.